There's a moment, isn't there, when you realize you're not just invisible, but actively erased? A moment when the people you've given everything to, your time, your money, your very essence, laugh in your face and tell you, quite plainly, that you don't matter. For me, that moment arrived cloaked in the deceptive warmth of a family birthday, punctuated by the high-pitched giggle of my 13-year-old niece. "Mom says," she chirped, her voice innocent, yet capable of inflicting surgical wounds, "if you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice." She said this while gleefully tearing the plastic from the screen of the brand-new, top-of-the-line smartphone I had just bought her, a phone that cost more than my monthly rent, a staggering $850. The living room, usually a chaotic symphony of family chatter, erupted in laughter. 30 guests, each one a familiar face, each one a silent co-conspirator. The sound echoed off the walls, bouncing around me like physical blows. 30 voices, 30 pairs of eyes, all finding immense humor in my niece's casual cruelty. All 30, except one. Me. I stood there, amidst the cacophony, a peculiar stillness settling over me. My sister, Linda, didn't even bother to look up from her phone. A tiny, satisfied smirk played on her lips, the kind of smirk a judge might wear after delivering a favored verdict. My mother, stirring something in the kitchen, feigned ignorance, but the subtle lift of her shoulders, a silent, almost imperceptible nod, spoke volumes. And my father? He didn't even try to hide his amusement. He chuckled, raised his beer, and muttered, "Well, she's not wrong." More laughter rippled through the room. My cousins grinned, and even Uncle Gary, who knew me only as the quiet guy who occasionally showed up at family gatherings, snorted into his drink. I just stood there, rooted to the spot. A fool. The perennial fool. The one who always paid, the one who always fixed, the one who was never, ever enough. "Thanks for the phone, Uncle," my niece chirped again, her attention already consumed by the glowing screen, her delicate fingers expertly navigating its surface. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the sudden, suffocating silence of my own realization. My face burned. The room, once so vast with all those people, suddenly felt impossibly small, closing in around me. But I said nothing. I just nodded. Because that's what I always did. I nodded, I smiled, I pretended. Always pretending. Then, Linda looked up. Finally. Her eyes met mine, and in that fleeting moment, I saw it, a flicker of triumphant amusement, a deep, abiding satisfaction. It was as if she'd been waiting for this exact moment, for me to stand there, speechless, humiliated, broken. "All right, everyone, let's cut the cake." My mother's voice rang out, bright and cheerful, a calculated attempt to sweep the tension under the rug. But the bitter taste of it clung to my tongue, thick and acrid. I moved to the kitchen, leaning against the counter, my hands curling into tight fists. My jaw clenched. And somewhere beneath the raw, throbbing hurt, something cold and resolute began to bloom. My hand found my phone in my pocket. Just 2 taps. 2 quick, decisive taps. And like a silent, invisible tide, every bill, every subscription, every single credit line I had ever set up for them, for Linda, for Mom, for Dad, vanished. My fingers moved without hesitation, guided by a new, powerful kind of muscle memory. A decision I hadn't consciously made until it was already done. Gone. Just like that. The voices around me blurred into a distant, inconsequential hum. The room swayed, a dizzying sea of familiar faces that now seemed utterly alien. They laughed, they cheered, they celebrated, and I wasn't there. Not really. I had been a ghost with a wallet, a walking ATM. But not anymore. I slipped out without a word, without a goodbye. And of course, no one noticed. My niece, bless her heart, had actually gotten something right tonight. I didn't go home. I drove straight to my apartment, packed a few essentials into a small travel bag. Then, I turned back. The black backpack. It was old, almost forgotten, shoved into a dusty corner of my closet. But tonight, it had a profound purpose. I filled it, not with my belongings, but with things they would never expect. And then, I returned. The house was still a raucous, noisy mess. No one saw me slip back in, walk down the hallway, and leave the backpack beside the stairs. And then, I was gone. Truly gone. By the time they noticed, I would be nothing more than a shadow. But inside that backpack, let them find it. Let them try to understand. The silence didn't last long. I expected panic, anger. What I got was an explosion. It started the very next morning. I woke not to an alarm, but to a relentless pounding on my apartment door. No polite knocks, no tentative rings. Just fists hammering against the wood, as if trying to rip it from its hinges. Open up. You think you can just do this? It was Dad's voice, loud and raw with fury. I stayed absolutely still, watching the door shudder with each blow. I know you're in there. You think you're smart? You think you're better than us? His voice cracked, not just with rage, but with something else. Something I hadn't heard from him in a very long time, fear. I remained silent. I wasn't playing this game. Not anymore. Eventually, the pounding stopped. I heard his heavy footsteps retreat, a muffled curse, and the indignant slam of his car door. But it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. 20 minutes later, my phone burst into life. A text from Mom. Just one line, "How could you do this to your own family?" I didn't reply. An hour later, Linda tried. This time, a call. I watched her name flash on the screen, letting it ring. Once. Twice. 6 times in a row. Finally, a message. "You think you're so clever? You think we can't live without you? Fine. See how long you last without a family." I read it and a small, dry smile touched my lips. Was that supposed to be a threat, or a promise? But the real storm arrived that evening. I was just stepping out of the shower when I heard the unmistakable click of a key in my lock. I froze. No one should have a key to my place. No one, except. The door burst open. Dad stormed in, red-faced, sweat beading on his forehead. Mom was right behind him, her eyes wide and frantic. "You think you can just lock me out?" Dad bellowed, his voice booming through my small apartment. "Get out," I said, my voice calm, but infused with a new, chilling coldness. "Get out? Get out? This is what you've become." Mom's voice was shrill, almost hysterical. "Abandoning your own family. We raised you." Dad interjected, his chest heaving. "You used me," I corrected, leaning casually against the kitchen counter, still drying my hair with a towel. "There's a difference." Dad stepped closer, his fist clenched, trembling. "You ungrateful little troublemaker." "Try it," I challenged. The words were out before I even thought, calm and solid, a gauntlet thrown. His hand trembled, but it didn't move. We both knew the truth. He wasn't a fighter. Never was. He was a bully who hid behind words, who shouted to mask his own terror. "What did you do?" Mom's voice broke. "The cards don't work. Linda can't pay her bills. The mortgage, it's all gone." "That's right," I nodded. "Everything I paid for. Everything I managed. It's over." Dad scoffed, a bitter, humorless sound. "Oh, you think you're so powerful? You think we need you?" "Seems like you do," I shrugged, gesturing around my apartment. "Since you broke into my apartment just to beg." "Beg?" He snarled. "You think we're begging? You think—" "Enough," I snapped, the single word slicing through his tirade. "Enough. I'm done." Mom stepped forward, her hands outstretched, tears welling in her eyes. "Please, this is your family. We're all we have." "All you have," I corrected, my voice unwavering. "I'm done being your safety net. Your bank. Your doormat." Dad's face twisted in disgust. "You little pest." I raised a finger, pointing towards the door. "Get out. Now." "You can't do this," Mom whispered, tears streaming down her face. "This is cruel." "Cruel?" I laughed. A sharp, almost manic sound. Cruel as telling your son he's worthless while spending his money. Cruel as using me like a tool and laughing behind my back. Dad stepped forward again, but this time, I didn't flinch. He stopped. His shoulders slumped. "You'll regret this," he muttered, his voice defeated. "You'll come crawling back." "I won't," I said, my voice like steel. They left, slamming the door behind them with a final, desperate flourish. But as I listened to their footsteps fade down the hallway, I knew this wasn't the end. Not yet. The next day, they tried a new tactic. Linda showed up at my office. I saw her through the glass partition, her face pale, eyes puffy from crying. My boss looked confused, then deeply uncomfortable as she began waving frantically at me. I stayed at my desk. "Sir," the receptionist's voice was hushed, "there's a woman here. She's nobody." I didn't even look up. But she didn't leave. I watched her through my peripheral vision, talking to the receptionist, her voice rising, her hands shaking. Eventually, security stepped in, politely but firmly guiding her out. I knew she'd be back. That night, another knock. My landlord. There's a bit of a situation," he shifted awkwardly. "Your family is downstairs making quite a scene." He blinked, clearly perplexed. "Tell them to leave, or I'll call the police." "But it's your family," he offered, a hint of accusation in his tone. "No," I corrected. "Not anymore." I watched through the window as they stood there shouting, waving their arms, until finally, security escorted them away. But I knew them. I knew their persistence. And I knew that somewhere in that house I'd left behind, there was a black backpack waiting. Waiting for them to open it. Waiting for them to understand just how far I was willing to go. The silence that followed was merely the calm before the storm. For days, I ignored their calls, their texts, their increasingly desperate voicemails. I even skipped work, letting the world fall away as I savored the newfound quiet. But I wasn't naive. I knew they wouldn't give up. It started with Linda's tantrums, messages filled with venom, blaming me for everything. Mom's tearful voicemails followed, her voice breaking as she begged me to be the bigger person and save the family. And then came Dad. At first, it was the usual noise, rage, threats, insults. But then his tone shifted. Calm. Calculated. An invitation. "Son," he texted, "let's settle this like men. No drama, just you and me. There's a game this weekend. Our team's playing. Come, let's talk it out. A setup." I felt it deep in my bones. But I agreed. I wanted this. So, I went. The stadium roared like a living beast. Cheers, screams, the rhythmic pounding of feet on metal bleachers. It was chaos. A perfect place for secrets to drown. Dad was waiting in section 12, row F. The seats around him were conspicuously empty, despite the game being packed. He spotted me instantly, waving with one hand, the other gripping the black backpack. My backpack. I walked down the steps, each stride steady, my eyes locked on him. He looked excited. A twisted smile curled on his lips, as if he believed he had already won. "Surprised I called you," he shouted over the din, patting the seat next to him. "Finally decided to talk like men, huh?" "Talk?" I settled into the seat, my gaze never leaving the backpack in his lap. "Is that what this is?" "Oh, I think it's a bit more than that." He leaned in, his voice dropping, barely louder than a whisper. "You thought you were so smart, huh? Running away, cutting us off. But you left a little present behind." His fingers drummed against the backpack. "We found this. And guess what, genius? We know." "Know what?" I asked, keeping my voice as calm as the cold wind sweeping across the field. "Your secrets. Your lies. You think you're clean? That you're better than us?" His voice sharpened. "You've been hiding things. I should have known. All those times you acted like a saint, like some savior." I almost laughed. "Open it then. Let's see what you think you know." His eyes flashed with something between fear and anger. Don't play games. I don't have to open it. I already know you've been stealing from us, manipulating, pretending to be a good son while hiding your little stash. Stash? I leaned back, feeling the cold metal of the seat against my spine. The only stash in there is the truth. The crowd around us erupted as the home team scored. But here, in our small pocket of conflict, there was only silence, tension, and a trembling hand on the backpack. "You're bluffing," he muttered, his voice wavering. "You're trying to make me doubt, but it's over. We're telling everyone what kind of person you are, how you abandoned your family. Go ahead," I gestured vaguely to the field. "Tell them all. Tell them how I paid for Linda's rent for 2 years. How I covered your debts when you gambled half your pension away. How I bought that phone for your precious granddaughter just before she told me I was nothing." His face darkened. "Shut up. No, let's make it clear, Dad. You've got a bag full of proof of everything I did for you, and everything you took. And you still think you have leverage?" His hand tightened around the backpack, his knuckles white. "Don't you talk to me like that." "Like what?" I leaned forward, my voice still calm, but my eyes burning. "Like the worthless piece of furniture you always treated me as? Like the walking wallet, the errand boy?" "Shut up," he shouted, standing abruptly, drawing a few curious glances from the rows behind us. "Sit down." My voice was ice, and for a moment, I saw it, the raw fear in his eyes. He hated me, yes, but more than that, he feared losing his precarious grip on things. "Or what?" He forced a laugh, thin and desperate. "What are you going to do? Attack your own father? You think anyone here will take your side? You really think they'll take yours?" I gestured to the crowd, the sea of strangers who didn't care about his bluster. "You're just an angry old man with a bag full of debts. And they don't know me, but they don't have to." His face twisted, his voice dropping to a snarl. You egoist." "Egoist?" I smiled. "I was your lifeline. And now you're drowning without me." He swung. I saw it coming. His hand, thick and trembling, aiming for my face. But I didn't move. I didn't flinch. He wanted a reaction, a scandal, proof that I was the villain in his story. But I just stared at him, calm, unblinking. And his fist stopped inches from my face, trembling. "I should have left you on the streets," he whispered, his voice shaking. "You were always a parasite." "Funny," I whispered back, leaning so close I could smell the stale beer on his breath. "That's exactly what I thought about you." Something in him broke. His hand fell. His shoulders slumped. The cheers of the crowd became thunderous, a perfect cover for the collapse of whatever pride he had left. I reached out, grabbed the backpack, and yanked it from his grasp. He didn't even resist. "Do you want to know what's in here?" I asked, loud enough for the people around us to hear. "Everything I did for you. Every cent. Every sacrifice." People were staring now, some whispering, some pointing. A couple even had their phones out. "You want the truth?" I unzipped the backpack, pulling out a thick stack of papers. "There it is. Proof of how I carried you. How I paid your bills. How I saved your house from foreclosure, twice." His face drained of color. "And you want to talk about betrayal? You betrayed me the day you turned me into your personal ATM. The day you laughed when they told me I was nothing." "Stop," he whispered, his voice small, his body sinking into the seat. "No. You wanted a scene. You got one." I tossed the papers at his feet, and they scattered, fluttering down the steps like dead leaves. I turned, walking up the steps, past the staring faces, past the whispers. You can't just leave," he shouted, his voice cracking. But I didn't stop. I didn't look back. For the first time, his voice meant absolutely nothing. They never stopped trying. Not at first. The day after the stadium, the day Dad's pride bled out on those cold metal seats, my phone rang like an alarm. Call after call. Messages flooded in. Accusations, begging, threats, a dizzying cycle of desperation wrapped in their familiar voices. I ignored it all. Dad was the first to break. His calls went from furious to pleading in a matter of hours. "We can talk this out. I'll forget everything. Let's be a family." But I didn't answer. Then it was Mom. Her text dripped with manufactured guilt. "You're breaking our hearts. We didn't mean it. Family is all we have." I didn't even read them all. Linda tried next. Her messages were pure venom. "You're a coward. A selfish, worthless coward. You've ruined everything." Then, abruptly, a shift. "Please, just talk to me. I didn't mean it. I was scared. Don't do this." But I did. Silence. That was my answer. That was my revenge. They didn't understand it at first. They thought I was bluffing, playing some cruel game. But as the days bled into weeks, as the bills they once ignored began piling up, as their friends stopped taking sides, they finally understood. They couldn't reach me. The landlord at their house called me, stuttering, trying to explain that they hadn't paid the rent. I simply told him that wasn't my problem. Mom sent me a photo of the family sitting in the dark, a single candle flickering on the table. "We have nothing left." I deleted it without a second glance. One evening, as I was walking back from the grocery store, I saw him. Dad. Standing outside my building, pacing like a madman. His face was pale, his hands shaking, that familiar fire in his eyes replaced with something else. Fear. He saw me, his face lighting up with a twisted, desperate hope. He rushed forward. "Listen, you can't do this. You're my son." "No," I didn't slow down. "I was your wallet." He stepped in front of me, his voice cracking. "We raised you. We gave you everything. You used me." I looked him dead in the eyes. "And now you have nothing." I tried to step around him, but his hand shot out, grabbing my arm. "You don't get to do this." His voice was a snarl, the old anger bubbling to the surface. "You think you're better than us? You think you can just walk away?" "I know I can." I pulled my arm free, effortlessly. And I did. He swung at me, slow, weak. I didn't even flinch. His fist glanced off my shoulder, more like a desperate shove than a punch. He stumbled, catching himself against the side of the building, gasping. Pathetic. The words slipped out, almost a whisper. His face twisted, that familiar rage flaring. "You'll come crawling back. You always do. You're nothing without us." I laughed. A loud, sharp sound that echoed down the quiet street. "I was nothing with you," I said, turning my back. I walked away. I didn't look back. That night, I threw my phone into the bottom drawer of my desk and left it there. The messages, the missed calls, they piled up, but they couldn't touch me. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten, shaky script. "Mom. Please. Your father is getting sick. Linda is losing her mind. We're falling apart. You're the only one who can fix this. Please come home." I crumpled it without reading the rest. They were falling apart. Good. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't. I didn't move. I didn't change my number. I didn't hide. I stayed exactly where I was, but I stopped being a part of their world. And their world crumbled without me. Linda's friends stopped answering her calls. Mom's distant relatives, the ones who used to send polite Christmas cards, ignored her now. Dad, he lost his temper at work one too many times and got fired. But I didn't care. I didn't watch. I lived. I cooked for myself, slept peacefully, went for long walks without worrying about incoming messages demanding my time, my money, my life. They were just voices now. Ghosts I'd left behind in a burning house, and I was finally, truly free. Months passed, and silence became a friend. I woke when I wanted, ate meals without guilt, spent weekends exploring the city I'd once ignored, feeling freedom in every quiet moment. Sometimes, I still catch myself expecting the familiar buzz of desperate texts, the suffocating guilt, the frantic voice demanding I fix their chaos. But it never comes. I had done the impossible. I'd buried them. Not in the ground, but in my life. I walked down Main Street one crisp autumn morning, past the cafe where I'd bought overpriced cakes for Linda's birthday. The boutique where I'd spent a fortune on gifts. The restaurant where I'd always paid for family dinners, where I was always so generous, until I wasn't. Ghosts. Just ghosts. On the corner, a street musician played a slow, aching melody. His voice was rough, honest. His fingers danced over the strings, creating a sound that didn't try to be perfect, only true. I stopped, letting the music wrap around me. It wasn't about love. It wasn't about heartbreak. It was about letting go. The world moved around me, busy and alive. I stood still, breathing it all in. When the song ended, I tossed a $2,000 into the open guitar case. The musician nodded, and I smiled. Not because I had to. Not because someone expected it. But because, for the first time, it was entirely for me.